Hi, I'm Randy Robison. This is Life Today TV, online and digital formats all over the world. I'm here with Bryan Jarrett. He is a pastor, but he's a little bit different kind of pastor probably than what you're used to. He is a pastor at North Place Church in a little place called Saxe, Texas. Nobody knows where that is, but we'll ask him that. But he also runs a place called Lonesome Dove Ranch in Royce City, if you know where that is. But what I want you to hear is sort of his philosophy towards doing church, and I think you'll find it interesting. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where's Saxe?
It's on the northeast quadrant of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
Okay.
So if you divide Dallas by Highway 75, which all of us locals know,
Yep.
It's north of the George Bush Tollway. So in 2008, our church bought 140 acres on the George Bush Tollway. So if you're going east...
What was out there when you bought it?
You know, all of that 15 years ago was nothing but cow pastures and people moving out of Dallas to find some ranchette estate.
Yeah.
Now it's urban sprawl has swallowed all of these rural communities, turned them into suburban areas.
So it's more suburban, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a lifelong DFW resident, most of my life anyway, I didn't even know where that was, but we just keep swallowing up little towns.
Yeah, we're 10 minutes from I-75, 6 minutes from Rockwall, you know, so I-30. Yeah. So we're right in the middle of everything, but it was just a small farm town. It makes for unique leadership challenges because you have a lot of rural mentality, a rural experience, which I love. That's where I'm from, and a lot of people from various places in the world coming to what was rural Texas. So yeah, it's a wonderful place to pastor.
You mentioned that your church was 100 years old, over 100 years old?
It's going to turn 100 in just a couple years, yeah.
Okay, so you're in a place that's been there forever, probably been pretty small. It's been out in the middle of nowhere.
You know, when I came just 11 years ago, the town was 7,000. So, and that was 11 years ago. And now there are 600,000 people within a 10-minute radius of the church. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So how do you approach church in that kind of setting with those kinds of changes, those kinds of dynamics?
You know, I think it's the answer to church anywhere. You find a need and fill it. I'm convinced that the greatest defense of the Christian faith in what is now a post-Christian America is what I call an embodied apologetic. It's God's model, incarnation. He became one of us to reach us. And my heart is fully convinced that the greatest defense is not just someone who can argue Scripture. I think that's important. But I think being Jesus with skin on in your community, I think our church is more about what happens outside of church on the weekends, and the weekends are simply a celebration of marketplace ministry and life change that happens in the community. And so we have philosophies and phrases that basically share our heart. God's called us to forgotten people and forgotten places. He's called us to invite the uninvited. Give people a seat at the table who aren't going to gain access to the table on their own.
What does that look like in your church and your ministry?
Well, the most logical way, we felt like there are a lot of kids in our school district who don't get invited to prom because of their physical disabilities, mental disabilities. So we approached the school district and asked, could we underwrite an all expenses paid trip for all the children in the special education department? And so at that time, they had a type of prom for the special education program, but they said we need help with our holiday party for our elementary age students. And
is that Christmas? Is that code for Christmas?
That was their code for Christmas. And one of the things we don't do is we don't infringe upon the open door. So we respect that. Sure. And we went into the school district, underwrote the party, and then they asked, could we begin hosting it at our church because it has more. So, you know, it was an awesome thing to see dozens and dozens of buses bring nearly 300 special education elementary kids. Our church buys all of their Christmas gifts. The special education program tells us that many of the challenges that come with their physical needs is financial burden on the family. Sure. So the Christmas that we provide for them at that party is the most significant Christmas that they will get. And it has gained us a right to speak into our community. Basically, we have earned credibility for our faith.
Absolutely.
By serving the underserved. So we now largely sponsor our community Special Olympics because we've shown a heart for that. They've asked us, they presented an award to us this last year for being the largest corporate sponsor of Special Olympics in Garland, Texas. But we then were approached to come and do the prom.
That's funny. They consider you a corporate sponsor.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's good. Okay, sorry. Prom.
Well, the prom came about. That's what we went for, but the need was the elementary age. So we've continued to do the elementary age, but then they came back because we earned credibility and said, help us with our prom. And for the last several years, we've taken prom to another level. We rent limos. We send all the limos to the various schools where the kids are. They get in at their school, come to our church. We hold the prom in our lobby. And then when they get out, we have the students from our youth ministry. If a young lady gets out, then a young man becomes her escort for the night. A young lady will become a male's escort when he gets out of the limo. And our church family just serves them. And you know, this is one way that we invite the uninvited. That's just one segment of our culture.
Yeah, but see, that's so beautiful. Because you know, when you're talking, and you get this philosophy, and you get, okay, what does that look like? That's what it looks like, though. I mean, that's the kind of thing. Do you do? Okay, I know the answer to this question, but I'm asking anyway. Not everybody's going to do that. So how do they find what they do?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
You mentioned at Lonesome Dove Ranch that we do Lonesome Dove Ranch. One of the things we do there is train small town pastors. Most of them are bivocational. And we tell them the way to engage their community is find needs and fill it.
Okay.
So one of the things we do, invite the uninvited, we broadcast a lot of our services through the year into several prison units. And we engage them, and our people cheer knowing they're watching. And these people have been so disenfranchised, many of it brought on by their own decisions.
Sure.
But the grace that we show, I get letters from those prisons all the time that when they hear our people in suburban America clapping, knowing that Easter and Christmas and some other services are being brought into their chapel, the dignity that it imparts to them. So pastors around the country that we have trained, they've started doing those things in their local jails, in their small town, loving and mobilizing their people. So the concept, there are so many uninvited people. When you look at the life of Jesus, he spent his time with the disenfranchised.
Yeah.
He spent so much time with the disenfranchised, the religious crowd rebuked him for it because he was taking a step down from what had traditionally been the role of a rabbi.
Even his own disciples question him at times.
Absolutely.
You're like, you sure? Are you sure about that? You know?
The whole reason we have the Luke 15 parable of the prodigal son is because he was being ridiculed by the religious leaders for eating with tax collectors and sinners. So he came and invested in the disenfranchised, the uninvited.
So that's what you tell other pastors to do, and you're seeing this work.
I see it.
I'm guessing.
They earn credibility. The church has been so labeled and known for what it's against instead of what it's for. And I don't think we compromise anything as it relates to biblical standards, but I do believe the heart of Jesus, I tell people, being Jesus with skin on in the community, embodied apologetic, an incarnational model.
Where does this come from? Somebody just train you to do all this? Did this a calling early in your life? And how did you know? What motivated all this?
I had a radical conversion. I grew up in a Christian family, but it was a very conservative family, so I rebelled against some of the creeds and traditions and got far from God. But when I had my experience, I had this gift to be an evangelist. I wanted to see people come to faith. And so I started preaching in my late teens. And I would go rent these little community centers in these small towns in the middle of nowhere. I'd hire a band and I'd put on a talk show, and people would come, we'd laugh, do some, stand up with people that were funny, and we'd sing. And then at the end, I'd tell my story, and it provided an opportunity to preach before any church ever invited me to preach. Well, those earned open doors. Pastors in those communities started having us come. And I became what, is known as an itinerant evangelist in the early days. And early on in my ministry, I heard Pastor Tommy Barnett in Phoenix say, and I have a story of hurt and abuse and brokenness, and so I identify with pain. And I heard Pastor Tommy Barnett say, go after the ones nobody wants, and God will give you the ones everybody wants. And I grew up in a family with humble beginnings. Either one of my grandfathers or my dad never graduated high school.
You were poor.
And so that my family doesn't like that label.
Okay.
So I say humble. We were humble. But, you know, by standards and suburban Dallas standards, yes,
yeah,
I grew up poor. But it was that statement by Pastor Tommy resonated with me because I had a heart for people that had lived through what I'd lived, abuse and abandonment and brokenness. And I realized it's a principle. It's a principle in Scripture. It's a God idea. And so my whole life has been about going after those people. And God has honored it. When we have launched things, gone after people, and there were never any resources. Never did I have any resources when we started anything.
Well, from humble beginnings, you never let that stand in the way. You knew you could make things work.
Exactly.
So,
you know, and God has always honored that, and I have found the principle Pastor Tommy has lived by when he and Matthew launched the Dream Center, all the things they've done. It has been proven there. It's proven in Scripture. It's been proven in our lives. And I never had I never had words for it. We lived it.
Yeah.
But as we were trying to shift the culture of a church that was climbing to 100, it's easy to move into maintenance mode when you're pastoring a church that's about to be a century old and rest on history and become all about yourself. It was in that moment God began to give us phrases about inviting the uninvited, forgotten people in forgotten places. So it drives the way we do global missions. It drives the way we engage our community. It's who we are.
Yeah. Wonderful. I hope you've been inspired, especially if you're in ministry, by what you've heard. Now, we're not going to go into all the goes on at Lonesome Dove Ranch, but you do some things there for pastors, so I want to give them the website for that.
Okay.
What is that?
LonesomeDoveTexas.com. So it's like Lonesome Dove and then Texas.
It's got nothing to do with the Robert Duvall thing, though.
No. It was named Lonesome Dove before we bought it, and it's too good to change, so we just left it.
That's a great name.
Exactly.
So check that out. If you want to hear some more of his personal story, that is going to be on Life Today. In fact, you can see that right now, the broadcast program, at lifetoday.org. But then do you have another website for your church? It's separate, right?
NorthPlaceChurch.com.
Well, you were good to get that early. I bet a lot of people are going, it's already gotten. So check it out. Great ministry, great testimony, and putting skin on the gospel? What is that?
Being Jesus with skin on.
Being Jesus with skin on. Man, I like that. I appreciate what you do, and I look forward to hearing more from you. Be sure to check that out on lifetoday.org. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe button because we want to let you know about all the great videos from Life Today.